okay? So, because most real estate goes up in value. So, for example, Jeff and I are teachers. Our first home that we bought, way back when, and then we lived there for 5 years, and then we sold it. Well, in that time, that house almost doubled in value. We did a lot of extra fixes to it. That's what happens with homes. Like what we had with a few years back, the market did go the other way, where you bought a house and then all of a sudden people weren't paying as much for houses. So that's called being underwater. That happened to me with my third house. So where I paid for it, and then if I wanted to sell it, I was able to sell it for more than what I bought for it. So I would have lost money. Okay, and but let's say you have to sell it, you're moving or something, that's when you do what is called a short sale. You're selling it for less than what you paid for it. So you've got to pay, you're not making any money. But as a young couple, like with our first house, we walked away from that house with like $60,000 because the house just, the same thing's true with land and stuff like that. So real estate is a pretty safe investment. Now you can invest in the stock market. That's riskier depending on what stocks and then there's other vehicles for you to put your money in. Some are called mutual funds. And what a mutual fund is, just made up of all sorts of different kind of stocks. So it'll have riskier stocks. It'll have real safe stocks. It'll have kind of medium risk stocks. And you can always choose, okay, I'm not real comfortable with risk, so I want all my put in a mutual fund that's safe stocks. Okay. So what stocks be safe? Well, think about things that never go away. You always need electricity. You always need kind of access. Those things aren't going anywhere. Okay, so the value by investing, that's a really safe value. Okay, if you think about any kind of company that makes things that people use every single day, that's a pretty safe stock. Amazon, probably pretty safe stock. Okay, now if you invest that's a little riskier, let's say like SpaceX. SpaceX, pretty hot stock right now. And if you invest in that, well, chances are that's going to go up, okay, because they're doing a pretty decent job. But it could go down. The whole company could, all of a sudden their rockets aren't so good or something. Something happens and the company goes bankrupt. Okay, that's more risky. Okay, but the more risk that you assume, the higher return you can get. That's how they get people to invest in stuff like that. Is that, hey, if you invest with us, this has a chance to really be a big money maker, and you're going to make a lot more money than if you put it with a safe stock. Okay, and then vice versa. Things happen. What we're talking about today is what's called return. So, if I was Bernie Madoff and I was trying to scam you, you'd hear me say these kind of words, and that's why I wanted to teach you about them. You'd hear me say total return, and you'd hear me say annual return. And what that is, that's telling you how much in percent you're going to get from me. And when we say, hey, Stenard, I guarantee you a total return of 180%. Stenard's like, that's cool. That means my money, whatever I give Krolak, he's going to multiply it by 1.8 and give that back to me. I didn't lift a finger. He did all the work. So that's what these numbers mean. Annual return is how much you would get back on a yearly basis. Most people deal if you're in the investing world, this is how you compare one product to another. So Prolac might be saying, hey, I guarantee you 20% annual return. And then there's another company that's saying, hey, I promise you a 11% annual return. And you're like, well, wait a minute, Prolac's saying 20%. I'm going to go with him. Well, it turns out that I'm scamming you, right? But so this allows you to compare different kinds of investments. So that's why these things are important. Now, the cool thing is that the total return is the same as the percent change, which we've already done. Okay, when we did all that work with percents, we spent a bunch of time on percent change. Well, that's all total return is. So if you had $3,000 and you put it into what is called a mutual fund. So a mutual fund is a big pot of money that is spread out amongst risky stocks, safe stocks, medium risky stocks, and so that all of the risk isn't in one area. It's spread out. That's called diversifying. That's a good thing. All right, but over 4 years, it grows to $8,400. Well, that's pretty good. Okay, what's your total return? So when you see the words total return, it's just asking, what is the percent change? Okay, so this was the formula for percent change. New value minus the original value divided by the original value times 100. The only thing that we're doing that's different is that the new value is referred to as A. That's how much your money is now, the accumulated amount. The original value, we use the financial term P for principal. So that's where it comes from. A minus P divided by P times 100. Okay, so if we did it for this one, our new value, because it grew, and it grew to 8,400, that would be A. This is what we started with, that's P. So now all I do is just plop them into the formula. 8,400 for A. Okay, 3,000 for P. Divide that by 3,000. And then multiply whatever that decimal is by 100, and there's my answer. Okay, so if I took this and worked it out, I got 8,400 minus 3 grand divided by 3,000. That's 1.8 times 100. So I get 1.8 times 100. So that's 180%. That's a return of 180%. Okay, so here's what happened. If you get a return of 180%, now if you remember this, okay, the new amount that you get, remember you started with 33,000 times, how many more times is your money than what it used to be? If the return was 180%. Do you guys remember? When something grew 100%, how did you figure out what the new amount was? Oh, I didn't do a very good job teaching you. If something increased 100%, if the percent change was 100, that means the new amount is 2 times the old amount. If it grew 100%, if it grew 180%, then the new amount is 2.8 times the old amount. Remember you had to add 100 to it? So if I told Stenard, hey, your money's growing 180%, and he's trying to do it in his head, well, shoot, I gave Krolak 10 grand. How much am I going to get? So in his head, he'd go, okay, I'm going to 10 grand I got from that record deal. Multiply that by 2.8. Krolak's going to give me back $28,000. So I just made $18,000 because Krolak knows how to invest. Or he's running a giant pyramid scheme, but I don't care because I've got the money. He gave me the money. Okay? So my investment is 2.8 times its original value. That's how he would figure out how much I would, if he said, Krolak, I want to cash out, I would have to write him a check for $28,000. Or I could say, hey, let me keep using this money and I'll make it even grow more. And he's like, sure, I'll do that because you just made me $18,000. And then I use his money to pay off other people. It's a really dangerous way to live. I don't know how the guy did it, but he did it for like 30 years or something. And then, and no one could figure out, God, how's he doing it? Well, it was, if something's too good, chances are it's too good to be true. Chances are it's not true. It's kind of a cynical way to look at the world, unfortunately, but you just got to really be careful. And the thing where people really got kind of ripped off by him, it wasn't the richy rich, because they got tons of money. They didn't give him all their money. It was people, older people that didn't have a ton of money, and they were able to invest with him. And once he went bankrupt, they lost all their life savings. They didn't have anything to live off of. The rich, they got extra money. But, the regular people out there didn't. And he screwed over a ton of people. You work your whole life and all of a sudden you gave your money to this person and they scammed you and your money is gone and you can't get it back. And, you're like, holy cow. You can only imagine how devastating that would be. All right. So bottom line is you got to be careful about who gives you advice and stuff, that you can trust them. And that's the hard part, I guess. Okay. So the next thing is, what if I wanted to give this information so that Stenard could compare what I do for him to somebody else? Because he's a big rock star now. He's got all this money. So there's going to be all sorts of people knocking on his door saying, hey, why don't you invest with me? And he's going to have to decide, well, which one of these people is honest, which one is going to make my money grow the best and not going to rip me off. And so, it's good to understand the basics of this kind of stuff. All right. So annual return, if we took this same scenario here, okay, so you put $3,000 in, grows to 8,400. All this does is just changes it. Instead of a total return, it just says what you would get on average every year. So the annual return, that's what that means. annual return. So if you ever see these words being used in like commercials and stuff, that's what they're talking about. Okay, so you take your accumulated amount, 8,400. All right, and then you, let's see, where is it? My principal, 3,000. Okay, and now it's 4 years. So up here I put 1/4. So I've got to do that exponent on my calculator. And then I'm going to subtract 1. And then I multiply all of that by 100. Okay, all righty. So now it's just a matter of running that thing through. So let's see, 84, you do the division first, 84 divided by 3,000, hit enter. Okay, then go exponent, 1 divided by 4, enter. Now subtract 1. Okay, that's the percentage. Now you multiply it by 100. And so I'm promising him a 29 point, I'll say 4 when I round it, 29.4% annual increase. So what happens, guys, is when you invest money, some years your money grows a lot, and then some years it might go down, and then it might grow slower. And what this is telling you is, on the average, your money grew 29.4% each year. Some years it grew faster than this. Some years it went down. Some years it grew slower. But overall, it grew 29. Now, that's a really great return. There's not too many things you can invest in that are legal that give you 30% return on your money. You know, that's, you better watch it. They're probably, in narcotics involved or something. All right. But that's what this means. And so now if somebody was trying to pitch you to get you to invest in something, you're going to ask them, well, what's the annual return? And they'll say, okay, my annual return is like 7%. And then another one might say my annual return is 6%. And then you can decide what you want to do. You just got to make sure that the data they're showing you is real. Because I can draw graphs. Okay, anybody can. All right. Does anybody do you guys understand what happened with like that whole GameStop thing? You TikTokers out there, was it TikTok that all invested in it? Do you understand what actually happened? Yeah. Did they talk about it like in your econ classes? I don't have any. But you understand what went on? Really? Can you tell us?
Well, so a lot of big investors and stuff, they always expect